If dates alone changed lives, last year's 11/11 would have already turned everything upside down. You went through that day, made wishes, lit intentions, and a lot of things stayed the same. This is not spiritual failure. It's just a reminder that no portal creates truth from scratch. It only amplifies what is already in coherence. This 11/11 is not about asking for just anything. It's about choosing what deserves to grow. After a full moon in Taurus, speaking through the body, Uranus demanding alignment between word and life, Mercury retrograde recalculating routes, Saturn with Lilith raising boundaries, and Jupiter retrograde cleansing the excess of faith. This portal doesn't arrive as a magic shortcut. It arrives as a checkpoint. A point in the middle of the crossing where the sky asks you, calmly and precisely, what in you is true enough to be amplified from now on. It's not about inventing a new me in one day. It's about recognizing what has already begun to change and what you know with every cell that you can no longer carry. If you feel that this 11/11 is not a stage for fantasy, but a door to a life more aligned with what is real in you, seal this pact in the comments by writing, with presence, only what's true. Before calling 11/11 a manifestation portal, you need to understand one simple, hard thing. No portal fixes incoherence. It doesn't come to correct what you've lived crookedly all year long. It doesn't take a life built on exhaustion, self-abandonment, and fantasy faith and magically transform it into an aligned destiny. A portal is not an eraser. A portal is an amplifier. It takes the dominant pattern in your field and turns up the volume. Think about everything you have gone through in the last few days. The full moon in Taurus made the body speak louder. Uranus messed with the distance between what you say and what you really live. Mercury began to slow down the mind to revise the route. Saturn and Lilith touched on the bill for shrinking yourself. Jupiter retrograde put your faith under audit. None of this was for nothing. It was preparation of the terrain. The 11/11 arrives after this sequence as if to say, I can only amplify what you have already begun to align. If you enter this portal still decided to ignore the body, to say one thing and do another, to leave your boundaries as a low priority, and to call any fantasy a spiritual vision, what the 11/11 amplifies is exactly that noise. More signs you don't listen to, more promises you don't sustain, more relationships where you give without return, more faith placed in stories that you know deep down are not for you. It's not punishment, it's energetic coherence. On the other hand, if you arrive here having made at least a few small moves, a boundary you held firm even with guilt, a timing adjustment in your schedule, a no spoken with more honesty, a belief you had the courage to question, this portal begins to work on another frequency, not to reward you, but to seal. It takes these discreet gestures and says, this is what will grow. Less noise, more core. Less spectacle, more consistency. This is why so many people get frustrated with dates like 11/11. Because they try to use the day as a shortcut. They write huge wish lists, repeat pretty phrases, do grandiose visualizations, but they don't move their foundations 1 millimeter. They want a real future built on a present that is still just scenery. They want to cross a portal carrying everything: weight, guilt, inherited patterns, empty promises, routines that make them sick. And the sky silently answers, this doesn't pass through. Today, the invitation is not to ask harder. It is to look with courage, at what the 1111 would really amplify in you if nothing changed. What would be the pattern that would become giant? The exhaustion, the feeling of always being a little behind yourself, the fear of taking a stand, the tendency to throw onto the universe's lap what is your part to decide. Or, on the contrary, would a new respect for your time begin to expand? A frontier you finally raised, a faith that is less naive and more clean. A portal is not a random door in the middle of nowhere. It is a passage point between what you have been up to this point and what you choose to continue being. It doesn't create spiritual character, it reveals it. It amplifies the real tone of your relationship with yourself, with others, and with what you call sacred. That is why, before thinking about what am I going to ask for today, the question that opens this chapter is different. If 1111 amplifies everything that is already most alive in you, what exactly will become enormous? Every portal has security. You don't just enter anywhere carrying everything. In spirituality, it's no different. On days like this, 1111, the question isn't just, what do I want to take with me? But also, and perhaps first, what is no longer allowed to cross? Not out of moralism, but because it simply doesn't fit through the door of a truer life. It starts with the baggage from the body that you already know is dead weight. Those habits, the moon in Taurus exposed, the way you sleep poorly and call it normal, the rhythm that squeezes the body to its limit, the small daily aggressions you justify with, it's just a phase. Today, if you try to cross with this, the portal doesn't close from the outside, it jams from the inside. You feel the friction, the coffee that no longer works, the foggy mind, the irritation with no apparent reason. The message is clear. You can't ask for a new life while carrying the same basic disrespect for your body. That stays on the outside. Then comes the baggage of the word. Phrases that you've already understood with Uranus and Mercury no longer match the soul you carry. I can always handle it. Put it on me. I'm used to being this way. One day I'll change. These are automatic scripts that keep you trapped in versions of yourself that are already expired. If you try to cross 1111, repeating these phrases, what the portal does is amplify their echo. They come back louder, clearer, until you realize you can't live a new cycle speaking as if you were still in the previous one. This old narrative is unauthorized baggage. There's also the heavy suitcase of relationships where you only fit if you shrink. Connections where you need to lower your tone, your strength, your truth, so no one feels threatened. Bonds where your love is measured by how much you tolerate, not by how much you grow. Saturn and Lilith already touched on this. You saw the price. Today, the portal asks, are these dynamics permitted to continue with you? It's not about breaking everything off in one day, but about admitting that certain formats don't pass through intact. They crack during the crossing. What requires you to spiritually mutilate yourself is not authorized to grow with you. Another piece of baggage that doesn't pass is the inflated faith of the old Jupiter, the one you use to avoid feeling reality. The idea that you just have to think positive, that if I want it badly enough, the universe will find a way, even when all the signs are asking for a different kind of movement. 1111 is not a check-in counter where you show up with an infinite list. It is a mirror that returns the question, where have you been asking for a miracle to avoid taking responsibility for what you know is your part? The desire that only exists as an escape, The intention that has no corresponding action, the promise that never reaches the body, all of this stays on the outside. And there's the most discreet clutter. The stories about who you are that you insist on carrying because it's always been this way. I am the one who endures. I am the one who saves everyone. I'm unlucky. I wasn't born for great things. It's too late for me. Narratives that might have made sense at another time, when you didn't have resources, when that was the only way to stay standing. But today, every time you repeat this, you lock a door from the inside. It's no use passing through any portal believing the most you're suited for is survival. These phrases are unauthorized baggage because they diminish the internal space through which the future itself could enter. Looking at all this hurts, because a part of you wanted to cross this 1111 with everything: people, habits, beliefs, versions, as if it were possible to drag the entire past into a new landscape. But real portals don't work that way. They require a filter. They ask you to look, ask yourself for forgiveness for the time you carried what was no longer yours to carry, and with respect, put some things down. Not out of anger, but out of love for the path you say you want to live. Today, before imagining what's on the other side, the most honest practice is this: look at your baggage and ask, piece by piece, bond by bond, phrase by phrase. Does this sustain me or shrink me? Does this cross with me, or do I say thank you and leave it here? 1111 doesn't need pretty answers. It needs that silent courage to not take with you what you already know you never want to see amplified again. After looking at what doesn't pass, comes the most important part. What in you deserves to cross this 1111 and be amplified? A portal isn't just a trash filter. It's also a recognition of gold. And as heavy as the year has been, there is something in you that remained standing, something that didn't break, even when everything pushed against it. That is what the sky wants to see, highlighted today. Think about the small gestures that, in the last few days, you managed to sustain, that boundary that for the first time you held even with guilt. That "I can't," said without drama, only truth. That timing adjustment where you decided not to cram one more task into an already packed day. That moment when you realized your body was at its limit, and instead of ignoring it, you stopped. None of these gestures are spectacular, but all of them are seeds of a more coherent life. They are exactly the kind of thing that 1111 can amplify without breaking you. Look also at the new clarities of your faith. Maybe you realized that some old beliefs no longer hold up, and instead of despairing, you decided to let them go. Maybe you stopped throwing all the responsibility onto "God will provide" and took a concrete step. Maybe you admitted, with humility, that you no longer want a spirituality that distances you from real life. This is refinement. This is faith ceasing to be fantasy and returning to being a bridge between what you feel and what you do. This honesty, as small as it may seem, is one of the treasures the portal recognizes. There is also the new respect for your own size. After Lilith and Saturn, maybe you don't have all your boundaries structured yet, but you no longer swallow certain things as you did before. You feel more quickly when you diminish yourself. You notice faster when you run yourself over. You feel strange in environments where you need to shrink too much. Even if you don't know what to do with this yet, this sensitivity is a sign that something has awakened. 1111 doesn't require you to be ready. It requires you to be awake enough not to fall back asleep in the same place. And finally, there is the part of you that keeps choosing to grow, even when tired. You could have closed your heart, given up, become hardened. Instead, you are here, listening, reviewing, questioning, trying to align body, word, boundary, and faith. This is not a small thing. In a world that constantly calls you to Anastasia, being present in your own process is already a huge spiritual act. The portal sees this. It is not hunting for perfect versions of you, but for the parts that, despite everything, continue to bet on what is real. So before making any request today, perhaps the question is, which parts of me do I want 1111 to protect and strengthen? It could be the respect for your time, the courage to say no, the desire to live a cleaner faith, the decision not to go through the next few months betraying yourself. Instead of asking only for external things, you can look inside and say, this is what I want to grow in me. This is how the portal stops being a pretty date on the calendar and becomes an alliance. Not between you and a distant ideal, but between you and what is already true within. 1111 doesn't need to create a new center in you. It needs you to choose with clarity which existing center deserves to be amplified. The rest inevitably will fall by the wayside. When people talk about 1111, many immediately think of ritual, candles, crystals, huge wish lists, specific music, a portal opening in the sky. None of this is wrong in itself. The problem is when the ritual becomes a spectacle and takes the place of what truly changes life. Internal agreement. Today, if there is any ritual, it needs to be a consequence of a commitment, not a substitute for it. Think about how many times you've done powerful things on dates like this. Written intentions, burned paper, taken an herbal bath, visualized brilliant futures, and weeks later, you were living the same conversations, accepting the same loose boundaries, repeating the same exhaustion. Not because the ritual didn't work, but because there was no concrete decision sustaining it. It was like signing a contract with a pen that had no ink. Today's portal asks for something different. Less show, more true signature. A simple way to relate to this 1111 is to think of 3 silent agreements. One for each axis the recent transits have touched: body, word, faith. In the body, the agreement can be a small, clear gesture. I will not go through the next few months treating my body as the day's leftovers. This can turn into something very concrete, almost too simple. Going to bed a little earlier, a few days a week, eating at least one meal with presence, walking slowly instead of just running from one place to another. Not as penance, but as a sign that you understood that spiritual expansion without minimal care for matter is fantasy. In the word, the agreement is with honesty. You don't need to promise you'll never say anything on automatic again, but you can choose one area where your speech will level up. Maybe it's deciding you will no longer say "I'm fine" when you're not, at least with one person you trust. Or that you will no longer promise what you know you can't deliver. Or that from now on, when something crosses the line, you will name it calmly instead of swallowing it. This commitment doesn't need to be announced to the world. It just needs to be real for you. In faith, the agreement is with cleansing. Instead of using the universe as an excuse, you propose to use it as support. The change is subtle and profound. I stop asking for what distances me from myself, and I accept not knowing, but I will not hide behind it. In practice, it could be letting a more sincere prayer, Replace an automatic list of requests. It could be admitting out loud that some things you don't understand, but you still choose to walk. It could be abandoning a phrase you've repeated for years and that you know today makes you shrink, even if everyone around you keeps using it. If you wish, you can add a symbolic gesture. Write on a piece of paper what you want to cross with you, not things, but qualities of presence, and keep it instead of burning it, like someone filing a contract, not like someone trying to erase the past. You can take a longer bath, but knowing that the water doesn't wash away the responsibility that is yours. You can look at the sky and say a few words, as long as they are whole. What makes this 1111 a portal is not the intensity of the ritual. It is the seriousness of the agreement. It's you knowing, inside, that today marked a point of no return in something, even if no one else sees, that, from now on, certain forms of self-abandonment will no longer cross, and that what does cross, crosses because you decided to sustain it, not because a magic date solved it for you. How do you know if this 1111 was just another pretty date or a real point of internal shift? It's not by what you feel in the moment, in the emotion of the day. It's by what begins to change, in silence, in the next hours and days. A real portal doesn't just leave goosebumps, it leaves a trail. The first sign is a change in the hunger to ask for things. You realize you're less anxious to list desires and more interested in protecting the little you already feel is true. Instead of thinking, what else can I manifest? You start to ask yourself, what do I no longer want to lose of myself? The energy moves from spiritual consumption to the preservation of the soul. The second sign is a clearer discomfort with old patterns. Conversations you used to endure in silence now sound stranger. Situations where you shrank without noticing start to become almost physically uncomfortable. It's not that everything changes at once, but you lose the ability to pretend everything is fine where it no longer is. This discomfort is the portal acting as a light, not as punishment. The third sign is a kind of thin but honest peace. Maybe nothing external has been resolved yet. The bills still exist, relationships remain complex, the routine doesn't turn into a movie. But in the midst of it, you feel that something in you has chosen a side. The side of truth, even if it's small. You know which weights you no longer want to carry, even if you don't yet know how to put them all down. The fourth sign is that you start to measure your choices more by the criterion, is this true for me, than by what will they think. This appears in small gestures, an invitation you refuse without drama, an answer you give with more transparency, an expectation you let go of. You haven't become another person, but you have gained a few inches of coherence. And this is what an adult portal does. It doesn't turn you into a myth. It just helps you stop living a story that no longer matches who you are. Many people treat 1111 as if it were the end of a movie. The big day, when everything resolves, when the universe descends with an "it's on now." But life doesn't move in perfect endings, it moves in crossings. This 1111 is not the end of anything. It's a landmark in the middle of the path. Look at what came before it. The body speaking with the moon in Taurus, the word being confronted by Uranus, the mind slowed by Mercury retrograde, the boundaries raised with Saturn and Lilith, the faith revised with Jupiter retrograde. None of this disappears just because the calendar flipped. 1111 doesn't erase what hurt, nor does it guarantee that starting tomorrow, you will never get lost again. It does something else. It draws an internal line. From here on, I know more than I knew before. This line isn't, I'll never make a mistake again. It's more humble. Now I know what hurts me, and I'm not going to pretend I don't. Now I recognize when my body asks for respect. Now I see when my faith escapes into fantasy. You will still have bad days, crooked answers, relapses. The difference is that you will no longer be able to claim total ignorance. The portal doesn't demand perfection from you. It demands responsibility for the consciousness you already have. Seeing this day as the middle of the path protects you from two illusions. The first, thinking that if nothing spectacular happens today, it didn't work. The second, believing that because you felt something strong, the work is over. The truth is that 1111 is much more about continuing than about starting. Continuing to care for your body when no one is watching. Continuing to adjust your timing when the schedule wants to swallow you. Continuing to honor boundaries when guilt tightens. Continuing to refine your faith when there is no special date. In a while, you won't remember all the details of today, but you will notice whether or not you honored what you marked. You will see if you went back to carrying weights you decided to drop, or if, even while stumbling, you continued to choose less fantasy and more truth. And if you have been faithful to the minimum you promised, something in you will be larger. Not in volume, but in consistency. You can keep this day in small forms: a piece of paper with a few sincere words, a simple habit you decided to protect, a short phrase that aligns you when everything gets confusing. It could be something like, "Only what is true grows," "My body is not leftovers," "My faith is not an escape," "My word is not an ornament." The important thing is that when you repeat it, you feel you are returning to yourself, not to a character. In the end, this 1111 isn't as interested in what you will receive after it. It is interested in the person who crosses. If you pass through this door carrying fewer excuses, fewer empty promises, and a little more presence, the portal has fulfilled its role. The rest, encounters, opportunities, paths, comes as a consequence, not as a prize. Because for those who choose what is true, any day can be a portal. This one just shines a light on something that deep down you already knew. The part of your life that deserves to grow is the part where you finally stop lying to yourself. If you stayed until the end, you've already understood that this 1111 was never about a magic shortcut. It was about looking, with deep honesty, at what can no longer cross with you. Small self-betrayals, promises you never had any real intention of living. Versions of faith that deep down were just fear in different clothes, and at the same time recognizing what deserves to grow, the boundaries you finally began to sustain, the new respect for your time, the cleaner way you speak with the sacred. From now on, this day is not a spell. It is a mark, a silent line within, saying, "I know more about myself than I knew before, and I refuse to pretend I don't." Some things you will still carry for a while. Others, you will let go of little by little. The important thing is that expansion, from now on, happens only in the direction of what is true in you. If this portal message made sense, remember to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. This helps this type of content find others who also need to cross over with less fantasy and more truth. And if today you choose that only what is real in you deserves to grow, seal this commitment in the comments by writing, with presence, only what's true. We'll see each other on the other side of this crossing.